a harbor on the coast of Kyushu, and the banner over the customs house is not Japanese. Mongol cavalry ride the road above the bay. The tax rolls in the magistrate's office are kept in two scripts, and the one on the left is the one that matters. In the garrison yard, soldiers from Korea and northern China drill in formations no samurai ever fought in. The children in the fishing village below speak one language at home and a different one in front of officials. And there is a word that does not exist here. It was never coined, because the thing it describes never happened. In our world, in August of 1281, that word was born. Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis and master of China, sent 4,400 ships and 140,000 men against the islands of Japan. It was the largest seaborne invasion in human history, and nothing larger would sail until Normandy. It never landed. Over 2 days in the middle of August, a typhoon came down on the anchored fleet and tore it to pieces. Most of that army drowned in sight of a shore it never reached. The Japanese called the storm kamikaze, the divine wind. So what if it never blew? What if the sky over Imari Bay had simply stayed clear? Kublai had asked politely first. 6 times. Envoys carrying letters that invited Japan to submit as a vassal, the way Goryeo Korea already had. The Kamakura shogunate did not reply. Then in 1275 the regent, Hojo Tokimune, 24 years old, had the envoys brought to Kamakura and beheaded. He did it again in 1279. That is not diplomacy. That is a decision to fight the largest empire on earth. He had reason to think he could. 7 years earlier, Kublai had already tried. 900 ships, perhaps 30,000 men, landing at Hakata Bay in 1274. The samurai lost that battle. Mongol units moved together on drum signals, while samurai rode out to announce their names and challenge single opponents. The invaders had massed crossbows, poisoned arrows, and tetsuhao, ceramic bombs that burst in the air. Japan had never seen any of it. And then the Mongols went back to their ships for the night, and weather caught them, and they left. Japan drew exactly the right lesson. For 5 years, the shogunate put the provinces of Kyushu to work building a wall. 2 meters of fitted stone running 20 kilometers around Hakata Bay, the one beach any fleet would obviously choose. Every landholder paid a share of it. It was the largest public works project in the country's history to that point. Then in the summer of 1281 the ships came back. Not 900, 4,400, in 2 fleets, one out of Korea and one out of the newly conquered south of China, and they arrived at a coast that was ready for them. Here is the part that matters, and it is not the storm. The wall worked. The Eastern Fleet reached Hakata Bay in June and could not get ashore. For 6 weeks it probed the coastline, took losses, and waited for the Southern Fleet to arrive. Samurai rowed out at night in small boats and boarded the anchored ships in the dark. Kono Michiari and Kusano Jiro made their names doing it. And the Mongols answered the only way they sensibly could. They lashed their ships together, hull to hull, and laid plank walkways between the decks, so that a boarding party coming over one rail met an army instead of a crew. It was a good decision. It was also the thing that killed them. Because on the 15th of August the typhoon came down on Imari Bay, and a fleet chained into one mass cannot scatter and cannot run. The ships beat each other apart against their own hulls. Accounts written afterwards described the bay so thick with wreckage that a man could walk across it. Now take the storm away. The chains come off in the last week of August. The Southern Fleet has arrived. 140,000 men are floating off a coastline 4,000 kilometers long, behind a wall 20 kilometers wide. They land where the wall is not. This is the moment history unfolded exists to find. An empire saved by weather, and the weather simply not arriving. If you want more turning points like this one, subscribe now. Because what happens next was never really a battle. It was arithmetic. Japan could raise perhaps 40,000 fighting men, And they were not an army. They were the retainers of individual landholders, summoned province by province, fighting in the manner their grandfathers had taught them. The Mongols had spent 70 years perfecting the business of taking a country, siege engineers out of Persia, Chinese infantry, Korean shipwrights, steppe cavalry, all of it moving on one signal system. Kyushu goes in a season, and then the shogunate's real weakness opens up, and it was never military. The Kamakura government paid its samurai in land. Every war it had ever won produced confiscated estates to hand out afterwards. But a defensive war against invaders produces nothing to distribute. No territory, no spoils. After the real victory of 1281, thousands of men who had fought and bled submitted claims for reward and were told there was nothing to give them. Takazaki Suenaga, a warrior from Higo province, spent years traveling to Kamakura to argue his case in person, and commissioned illustrated scrolls of his own deeds to prove he had earned it. Those scrolls survive. They are the finest eyewitness record we have of the invasions, and they exist because a man could not get paid. That grievance ate the Hojo regime for 50 years and helped bring it down in 1333. In this timeline, it does not take 50 years. It takes 2. And here is the question I actually want argued about in the comments. Historians still disagree about how close 1281 really was. One reading says the wall and the samurai had already beaten the Eastern Fleet, and the typhoon merely finished a job that was going to finish itself. The other says the wall covered one bay out of hundreds, and the storm was the only thing standing between Japan and a Yuan province. Was the divine wind the cause, or just the excuse? Tell me which one you believe, because the honest answer is that nobody knows. The world had not finished changing yet. Because a conquered Japan is not simply a defeated Japan. Goryeo Korea shows the template. A native dynasty left in place, married into the imperial family, taxed, garrisoned, and required to build ships for the next war. And there is always a next war. Then the losses stack up, and they are enormous. No Ashikaga shogunate, no Sengoku, the century of civil war that produced the daimyo, the great castles, Nobunaga and Hideyoshi, no Tokugawa, no Sakoku, the closed country policy that sealed the islands away from the world for 200 years from 1639, because a province is not in a position to close its own doors. Japan spends the 14th century as a continental holding instead of an island apart, and when the Yuan dynasty collapses in 1368, on schedule, to the Ming, what breaks away is not the Japan we know. It is something that has spent 3 generations inside China's administrative system, writing in its scripts, moving on its roads. Now go and look at what actually happened instead. In Fukuoka today you can still find it. Sections of the 1281 wall, low gray stone sitting in the middle of a modern city, excavated and preserved behind railings. It is the physical evidence of a country that decided it could be invaded and prepared accordingly. But the storm taught the opposite lesson. Twice, in 1274 and again in 1281, the wind had come. Japan concluded that it was not lucky. It was protected. That belief hardened into doctrine across 6 centuries, that these were Shinkoku, the islands of the gods, and the gods would not permit a foreign army to land on them. In October of 1944, with the American fleet closing and the war already lost, Japan reached for that idea one final time and gave its name to the young men it sent up in aircraft that were not meant to come back. They called them kamikaze. The wind did not come the 3rd time. So which was it? The cause or the excuse? Was that storm the only thing between Japan and a Yuan province, or had a stone wall and 40,000 stubborn men already settled it? Tell me in the comments. If this timeline moved you, hit the like button. It is the signal that tells YouTube to keep finding turning points like this one. And subscribe, Because next time History Unfolded asks what the world becomes if the Zulu army that destroyed a British column at Isandlwana in 1879 does not stop at the river, if 20,000 spears cross into Natal instead of turning back. That timeline is coming. Don't miss where it goes.